All right, guys, the former Prime Minister of St. Vincent, Ralph Gonsalves, have just told the current government, advised them not to accept U.S. refugees, deportees, whoever you want to call them. Basically, he is saying that the region need to come together fast to create a plan of creative resistance. And you'll know what I'm talking about by the time the video is finished. I'm going to show you that video where he's talking about it from something he said on Monday. He's informed opposition to accepting deportees and refugees from the United States. He's viewing the policy as a dire threat to national security. And he also was arguing that the US selectively keeps what you call valuable residents while offloading individuals with criminal histories who would likely integrate into locally distant networks in our countries. You remember, that the United States of America doesn't send the information most of the time. Governments have been arguing for that all the time. And of course, Gonzalo's emphasizing basically that limited transparency regarding these individuals. The background makes it impossible for small island nations to manage potential dangers like repeat offenders or violent personalities. And furthermore, he was highlighting the legal impossibility of detaining these people indefinitely, which would result in permanent local destabilization. So instead of complying with American demands, he was advocating for creative resistance and suggest negotiation for better terms, a number of things that you can ask for. But listen to the video and let me know what you think and leave your comments in the section below.
A few months ago, just not too long before the last election, and the elections here in St. Vincent and Grenadines, the U.S. government they were making the wrongs to all the countries. Maybe testing the waters to see whether countries were willing to entertain them. And I told the U.S. authorities that it was not within their interests and our interests to accept deportees and refugees from third countries emanating out of the United States of America. The point that I made was that the numbers you're going to ask us to take, not going to move the needle. You have tens of thousands of persons to be refugees and persons to be deported from the United States of America. The numbers they were talking about, the ballpark, 10, 12, maybe up to 20. Let us say 12 for each of the 6 OECS countries. That's 72 persons. That's a drop in the bucket as far as the U.S. would be concerned. So why do they want to put that pressure on us? Just to tick a box? To say that they get you to do it so they can then go to larger countries, say in Latin America and other parts of the world, say, hey, these nationalist governments in the Eastern Caribbean, small, they take in as many as they can take. What about you? Why don't you take more? Because this doesn't move the needle. This does not move the needle whatsoever. So I told the American authorities, I said, listen to me. If you take 12 every year, these 72 across the OECS, they're going to keep in touch, They're going to get linked with the local and regional criminal class, at least some of those, because not all of them would be bad eggs who are coming in. But a sufficient number of them would be bad eggs that you're going to have real problems with your security. And you take 10, 12 this year, 15, you take another number next year. It adds up for us to a significant number. And I said to them, you have one Haiti already. Why do you want to open the doors of insecurity? For ourselves, it's not in your interests. Please don't do this. Because as our friends, I had to persuade them that it is not in their own interest also for this to be done. But if you're going to, if they pick you off with issue by issue, you're going to end up in a vassal relationship. But you have to go and address the broad range of issues with a focus on peace, security, and shared prosperity. Let me give examples. What are some of the things which can put in the mix? On specific issues like this, the refugees and deportees, as I will explain shortly, we should say no. We should say no. And we should explain in the manner in which I've just said that it's not in the interest of the United States of America for it to be done. Because our numbers, the needle is not moved in any significant way for them. All this talk that you could get persons of some quality persons and all the rest of it to come to augment your skills, etc., and that you have a right to refusal. Look, all that sounds good on paper. The truth of the matter, the Americans would like to keep the people who are skilled and the people who could build up their country. They don't want to send them to us. What we're going to get, by and large, are quote-unquote the dregs. Just like what they sent to El Salvador. Of course, in the case of El Salvador, they send people who are, well, some of them are criminals, but some of them are not. And they have a particular approach in El Salvador. They get a fee to lock them up. I don't know for how long. I don't know what their laws are saying in that regard. But I know you can't take deportees here and refugees and lock them up. We are signature to certain international treaties. You can't lock up somebody. Where are you locking them up for what? You can't lock up somebody indefinitely, for instance, for an immigration offense in St. Vincent and Grenadines. You may be detain them pending deportation. But the fact of the matter is this. You can only have them for a short period of time. So if that is the case, in people who overstay here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, when you bring in people from overseas, refugees and deportees, it's not a simple case of just accepting them. First of all, who controls the information and who these persons are? The Americans. What has been the history in this regard? The history in this regard has been such that even in relation to our own nationals, if they deport in a person after they had served a sentence, say, for burglary, robbery, an immigration offense, homicide, they will tell you that that is the offense that the person has just served a jail term for their detention. But they're not giving you a history of the individual. You don't know, for instance, whether the person is a psychopath. You don't know whether the person is a repeat offender. You don't have the background, the psychosocial assessment of this individual. None of these things are given you even in relation to our own Vincentians who were deported for whatever reason. And when you talk about first, we're talking about refusal. You can refuse them. They put them on the plane and land at Argyle. When they're landing here, what are you going to do? Tell them go back on the plane? The people who bring them will just say, no. We have our instructions to leave them. And then you're going to have a standoff. It is fraught with problems with the implementation, information you get, plus what you're going to do with them when they're in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Or wherever they are, but I'm talking St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Now, let's drill down a little further. I don't think they would be sending refugees. I think they would be sending applicants for refugee status in America. Because under their own law, as I understand it, and in accordance with international law, somebody gets a refugee status through the system in the United States, that they're refugees for there, not to send them somewhere else. So the ones who they will send for us are those who have made applications for refugee status. These are the applicants. And I'm thinking through this thing logically as a lawyer and somebody with experience with these particular matters. Those in relation to deportees, what about their information? I come back to that question. We don't know who they are. And you wouldn't be given the information. The Americans control the information. I hear attempts to justify that a few of them may be highly skilled people who you could benefit from and who are not criminals. You think those are the ones the Americans want to send for you? They want to keep those. Now, in addressing the issue in an overall manner between ourselves and the United States of America, there are things which if we get together, we can put on the agenda. And some of them may even surprise the Americans, what you want to put on the agenda.